Yo.
Hi,
Hey.
Jacob.
Hey. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. Too, yeah, I'm good.
Fine.
Yeah.
Are you drinking? Beer? It's a bit early, isn't it? I was going to say urine, but that would have been impolite. I wasn't even thinking that, Jacob. Sorry. What is it? Apple juice.
No, it's just tea, regular tea.
Tea. I see. Okay. Very good. Uh, we've got a guest who's muted. Hello, guest. They don't want to say anything. Okay.
Yeah, Jocelyn. Hey.
It's Jocelyn. Hello. So, no, Jocelyn's gone again. So, Jacob, have you had any progress with your idea? Have you decided what you're going to write about? Because I'm going to, hey, Jocelyn. So I'm just going to say that we're sort of, I should really wait till everyone arrives, but the idea today is we talk about your things.
Yeah.
You know, we'll look a little bit at Bandersnatch, but Bandersnatch sucks, and you've all had much better ideas than Bandersnatch, so let's not waste time on that. So I think let's just rip into it. Jacob, do you want to talk about what your concept is going to be that you're going to talk about in your script?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that as well because my idea is a video game, which I'm wondering is whether that works or if we're supposed to go into interactive stories.
It's fine. You can do a video game. We'll just get no marks. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Fine. Okay. But I think for video game, I mean, obviously I'm happy to discuss that, but Cash is really the guy to talk about.
Yeah.
If you've got a video game concept. Yeah. But I'm happy to talk about it as well. Sure.
And that brings me to another question then. Like, in case that I were to select something else, like take, for example, we were talking about interactive TV shows.
Yes.
Would that work to pitch as well?
Of course.
It would. All right.
Sure.
Because
why not?
of a voting-based system there rather than like something you press the button and the story progresses.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. So yeah, but can you decide, like in the next 2 minutes, what you're? How soon can you decide? Because this is going to be this is the last time that I'm going to see you before everything gets handed in. In fact, it's the last time I'm going to see you ever. Oh my God. Though of course I'm happy to stay in touch for as long as you like. But this is it. So I think, Jacob, just decide what you want to do. I will we'll discuss it and offer comments on it and all that sort of thing. So it's, obviously then you can change your mind again. Or we can discuss both the ideas. If yours still absolutely torn, and then you'll work it out later. But obviously it's more efficient for you if you worked out which one you want to do first, and then we just devote all our energies to talking about that.
Yeah.
But either way is fine. Either way is fine.
I could perhaps then talk about my least developed idea between the two that I'm stuck between, perhaps, and we'll see if it either gets further developed.
Talk about both of them. Let's talk about both of them. Because if you don't mind my saying so, Jacob, you have some great ideas and some not great ideas. Yeah. So but I only say that to you because you do have some great ideas. So if we talk about both of them, then we might possibly, I can at least offer an opinion, and then in 10 years' time, when the idea that I said was rubbish is a huge hit, you can tell everyone about, how this crap guy told you it was going to be rubbish and how wrong he was. So anyway, we're all here. Hey, hello, Albert. Hello, Jack. Welcome
Jack.
to the last flight of the the interactive storytelling thing. So as I was just saying to Jacob, let's look quickly at a little bit of Bandersnatch as per the schedule. But I think Bandersnatch is a load of crap, though it's been extremely successful in its own way, and it's extremely clever and brilliantly done. But you've all expressed ideas which are much, 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 much stronger than Bandersnatch as an idea for interactive storytelling. So let's not waste too much time on it. What I really want to do is talk about your ideas. We can also talk a bit about the strengths and weaknesses of interactive filmmaking, but it's what I really want to do is talk about your ideas. So now, if you're thinking, oh God, I'm still not sure what I'm going to do anyway. Well, then as I've just said to Jacob, if you've got two ideas and you're not sure which one to do, let's talk about both of them, because you've only got about 3.5 hours till the deadline. So it's now time to make a clear, hard decision so that you've got between now and the deadline, whenever that is, in a week and a half or something, isn't it? 10 days or so. So you've got all the time between now and the deadline to actually do the one that is strongest. Yeah, does that work? Cool. Okay, so but let's get the Bandersnatch thing out of the way first. So has anyone actually watched Bandersnatch before? Had anyone heard of Bandersnatch anyway? We've got 3 nodding heads. Jack, I'm assuming. Oh, you've seen it. Okay, fine. All right. So obviously, let's just take a little bit of a step back. So what is the unique thing about Netflix compared with all other media companies? What is the unique thing about Netflix? Jack, I can see you've got the idea there. What's the unique thing?
It's not the subscription thing, is it? It's that everything drops at once.
Well, but Apple Plus has got subscription, Disney Plus has got subscription.
Yeah.
So lots of people have got subscriptions. So what's the unique thing? What's the difference between, say, Netflix and Disney Plus?
Exclusive content?
Yes. In what medium is that exclusive content made for? When Netflix makes, like, as you so rightly say, Jack, when Netflix makes, a video, what's it exclusively for? Where's it going to be viewed?
Exclusively on Netflix.
On Netflix, which is
an online service.
Exactly. Is there a Netflix cinema?
No.
Is there Netflix TV? Like broadcast from a satellite or broadcast from, a big antenna? No, obviously not. So Netflix is completely unique amongst all big media companies because, as Jack says, it's creating content exclusively online. And the amazing thing is that everyone still thinks it's television, including Netflix. They still say it's television or maybe cinema. But essentially, we've got this thing where everyone is watching internet content, but they're not calling it internet content. Have we ever seen Netflix call any of their stuff a webisode? Of course not. But every Netflix series is a webisode. They're all webisodes because they're all made to be consumed entirely and exclusively on the internet. that is completely different from Disney, where obviously they do make some stuff which is purely for online, and no doubt are making more and more and more of it. But you know, and obviously there's coronavirus. But you know, even let's say 3 years ago, when no one had ever heard of coronavirus and no one had ever heard of Wuhan, you know, Disney was making films primarily for cinema, and they'd go on cinema first, and then they'd go on TV after a while, and then they'd go online. And those were the windows, and that was what the film industry was based on. Netflix never did it that way. They always created content exclusively for the internet. But the bizarre thing is that we don't think of it as content created for the internet. We think of it as TV, because TV is good, or cinema, because cinema is even gooder. We don't think of it as stuff created for the internet, because the internet is crap, and stuff made for the internet is crap, as we all know. But that's not Netflix, because Netflix is good, even though it is exclusively and entirely created for the internet. So here we are. Now, what is one of the unique characteristics of content on the internet? And your clue is it begins with an I. Content on the internet is...
It's instant.
Instant. Also, it's in... Think of the name of... Interactive, exactly. So it's inherently interactive. Internet content is inherently interactive. That's the way it is. Now, with 99% of Netflix shows, of course, they try to pretend it's not. They try to pretend that it is television. Try to pretend it's cinema, but just somehow you're not watching it in a cinema, but you know, you sort of kind of are. As far as the film is concerned, it's as if it's made for the cinema. So, however, it obviously occurred to Netflix that this was a bit weird, and that if they were making their content entirely for the internet, maybe they should try making some of it interactive. So they did a little bit of an experiment, and given that it's a novel experiment, who did they target the initial things of their experiment at? Would they target it at old people or at
young people?
Young people, and like young people like you are, or even younger?
I'd say
I think even younger.
from us and down.
Well, down even from you. My God, that's no. So exactly. So exactly. So so they did a little bit of an experiment, and they aimed initially at kids. So they created 3 or 4 series. Sorry, they created 3 or 4 interactive programs which were aimed at kids, and what do you think the quality of these was? Bad. Absolutely shockingly awful. So there have been a number of Netflix experiments, and on the whole, they are absolute crap. Because the problem is, of course, that the people at Netflix have never done this course, so they don't know how to do an interactive film. You know, you think I'm joking? You just watch these fucking things they produced, and you will see what I mean. So the Netflix kids series, they usually have a ladder structure, because someone has said, okay, so we're going to do this interactive thing because someone in senior Netflix land has said we need a are you familiar with the term a USP? Not a USB, a USP. Jocelyn, what's a USP?
You mean the delivery service? No, that's UPS, I'm sorry.
No. So a unique selling proposition. So a unique service proposition, some unique thing that you've got, which is why people should get your product and not anyone else's product. So someone at Netflix clearly said, oh my God, Disney are going to come in with Disney Plus. They've got like 700 years of back catalogue of hit films. They own Star Wars. They own Snow White. What the fuck are we going to do? Someone else would have said, oh, we'll use our USP, which is that, as Jack pointed out, everything we do is for the internet. So we could make all this stuff interactive, and that, if it worked, that would give us a unique approach that Disney and so on couldn't copy, or would find it hard to copy. So let's try it first with the kids. So then they said, okay, well, we've got to make it cheap and easy. All right, so they came up with this ladder structure. So if you look at the Disney kids programs, they have a ladder structure where you come in, you make a choice, and it's some annoying, obvious, pain in the ass, sort of trivial choice that you don't care about. And you choose A or B, and then you go down, and then there's another choice. You choose A and B, and you can go back to the first rung, or and basically none of your choices have any real impact on the story, because it's all just going to go in a straight line down one of these two straight lines, which sort of comes together at the end. But one of the key problems is, because we looked at something like Lifesaver, where again you've got a single story, but you have to fight your way through it. The problem is that someone else said, but this is television. We have to let people be able to not do anything, which is fine, but then the choices become completely meaningless and pointless, because you just sit there, you don't make a choice, and it will go bloop, 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 and it'll choose for you. Bloop, 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 and it will choose for you. So you don't give a fuck about any of these choices. There's no jeopardy. There's no peril. And the most shocking example of this was the most recent, and maybe the last interactive thing they've done, which was You v. Wild with Bear Grylls. And this is a Bear Grylls survival film, which is a great premise for an interactive film. So you're Bear Grylls and you're running through the desert, and you've got a choice about, do you go down the canyon, or do you sort of go over the sort of rickety looking piece of wood. But the problem is there is absolutely no jeopardy. If you don't decide, then it will just decide for you. Either choice, either of these supposedly fatal choices, he'll be fine. They don't do what would have been so easy and make it that if you make the wrong choice, you just see Bear Grylls like sort of fall away and disappear, and then it sort of fade to black, and you have a little news footage saying, "Adventurer Bear Grylls died tragically, today," da, 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 and try again. If they'd done that, then there would be jeopardy. If they'd done that, then your choice would have had some actual emotional impact, but they don't. It's this ladder structure, you make these choices, and it's complete shit. So they've done sort of, I don't know, 7 or 8 of these kind of horrible things, and they're all expansions of existing series. Then there is one notable exception, which is Bandersnatch. So Bandersnatch is a Black Mirror Charlie Brooker project, and it is an ironic model. It's not remotely ladder structure. We looked a few weeks ago at this insane, completely chaotic sort of structure that it's got, it's got about 5 hours of footage total. However, so it's an ironic model of choose your own adventure books. Have any of you read a choose your own adventure book? No. Well, they're pretty horrible. But if you want to get a sense of how horrible they are, just watch Bandersnatch, which we will do right now, but not for very long. Okay, so I am going to log out. So that I can share, I need to log out, and then I will log back in again. So I'm leaving now, but don't get too excited, because I'll be back in 30 seconds. Okay, see you in a sec.
I'm at Starbucks, and there's just like a lot of Christmas music playing in the background. That's why I was dancing.
Oh, Starbucks.
Yeah. because they're doing construction work at my mom's place.
Oh,
So I have to flee, basically.
Really make any difference. What they care about is, do you subscribe? That is the thing Netflix care about. And from that point of view, Bandersnatch was a big success because it got a huge amount of chatter, far more chatter than any other episode of Black Mirror has ever had, and would, I assume, have drawn in quite a lot of people who thought, I want to see this Bandersnatch thing, and got Netflix as a result. Anyway, okay, so that is Jocelyn struggling with her yawns. So let's push on quickly. Let's wake up Jocelyn. So that's Bandersnatch. If you want to discuss it further, please do. But it's a horrible model in all sorts of ways. But it's quite well known. Now let's talk about your projects, which is obviously what we care about most. Also, just to remind you, I sent you that document about 27 types of interactive film. I will refer to that if any of your ideas kind of seem like it might be useful to have a look at that. But if not, we won't bother. Let's just talk about your projects. So I know we've got all day, but there's a lot to get through. So I think probably let's do fairly quick pitches now, and then this afternoon we can talk in more detail. As I said, feel free to pitch more than one idea if you're still thinking about more than one idea. Who would like to go first? Jocelyn, yay.
I'll go first because I have two ideas.
Okay.
And I must apologize for the background noise. I don't know if you can hear it. I hope not. Is it good? Okay, cool. So basically, the first idea I've already pitched 2 weeks ago about the domestic abuse one with the dialogue that I wanted to do. I've been doing a lot of research on that topic, but I think I have some challenges in that sense where I don't know how much a person, like a third person, can interfere with like a family having domestic abuse issues. So, you know what I mean? Like it could get dangerous for the person involving themselves instead of just seeking help for the person and then leaving the family alone. But at the same time, if you're acting as if you're in a friend group and this is your friend, just like interfere and then be like, oh, that's your problem now, I'm out.
Okay, that's interesting. Is that the only reason you don't like that idea? Because the thing is that dramatically you want to get in there and you want to kind of have some more intensity, but
Yes.
you can't do that if you're just following the rule of this
Exactly.
is how you help other people.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's a bit of
that's an interesting point, but I would say two things. I mean, one is for the purposes of your script writing. We're not worried about that. For the purposes of the script writing, you could have a thing which gives all this terrible advice, but we don't care. We're not marking you on the quality of the domestic abuse advice you're giving. So I wouldn't worry about it from that point of view, but it's worth knowing about, because if you then were to take it to a domestic abuse charity, they might say, you got to be out of your mind. You can't be advising people to do that sort of thing. But
yes.
that's them. They're not doing the marketing. So
Okay, cool.
so I wouldn't worry too much about that. What was the other idea?
The other idea was an idea I came up with a few days ago, which is basically a film where a child, it's a POV of a kid using the internet and using the computer. In days where I used a computer, so it's like a big old computer and you're like sitting there and you have to explore the internet. And it's basically an interaction with the family passing by behind them and them setting up a profile for like a messenger, telling them how to do it, like teaching them how to set up a profile where they can protect their identity online. and what the risks of the internet are without the parents knowing, or without the parents realizing what they're doing. Does that make sense?
So it's like an internet safety film.
Yes, and you're basically the child setting up the profile. So it's helpful for parents that do not have any. I mean, it still exists. My parents didn't know anything about the internet when I used it back then, but it's still like setting up a profile and then asking for the age, for example, and the child is clearly 13 or something, and you're just lying, and they're like, "Oh, I'm 14," and they kind of like, are you gonna say you're 14 or are you gonna say you're 13 and then not being able to set up the profile? And this is like the choices you have instead of.
Got it. Okay, so Jocelyn, it's completely up to you, but I beg you to do the first idea.
Okay.
I mean, you know, fine. If some internet safety outfit wants to pay you to do an internet safety film, that's a charming approach. But, you know, in terms of something which is going to be sort of meaty and emotionally engaging and all that sort of thing, there's no.
Definitely.
So, yeah. Okay. So, cool. So, first idea. Great. Okay. Let's keep going. I mean, if you want to discuss that more now, I'm very happy to do so. Or if you want, you know, just zoom off. I think let's all hear our basic pictures, but then, okay, we'll talk about that more this afternoon. Okay, great. Who's next? Albert. Albert, it's exciting. You don't need to do this in a sort of despairing kind of.
No,
Oh
that's
God!
that's just my
God,
standard face. I swear.
I'm going to be. I'm either going to be hanged or have my head and throat cut, so I might as well go for it now. Whichever.
It's just
Yes.
my default face.
That's your default face. Okay, that's your resting martyr face. Okay, very good. Okay, excellent. So go ahead.
So I'm pretty settled on my idea, which is just what to do if someone's drowning, in sort of similar style to Lifesaver.
Great. Love it.
And yeah, so I mean, there's not very much to say, but that's pretty much what it is.
Cool. Did I talk to you about the? So cool. So great idea. Very solid. Are you the drowning person or the saving person?
The saving person. But I mean, I was wondering about this because, like, with the drowning thing, it kind of depends on the scenario, which depends on what you do. So, like, if your response, if someone's like drowning in a pool, is different to if someone's drowning at the beach, for instance. And so I was wondering if I'm allowed to like say that there's multiple videos in this.
Sure. So I mean, if you look at Lifesaver. When we launched Lifesaver, there's 3 stories. Okay. There's heart attack, where there is an AED available. So the story is the person has the heart attack, you do all the CPR, then someone arrives with an AED, you stick the AED on, boom, shock, ambulance turn up. But then there's also story 2, which is choking. And there's story 3, which is actually the most boring one, even though it's got Daisy Ridley in, which is heart attack, and there's no AED. The AED never arrives. You just keep CPRing until the ambulance turns up. So you could say that, you know, you'll have 2 stories, but if you can think of a third option, that's obviously nicer. Or, you know, 3 stories, and one is you're the rescuer. But then another one is you're the drowner, if that's a word, and then another rescuer in a different situation. Did I talk to you about the slightly creepy but also rather fascinating guy from Portsmouth I heard who talked about the pathophysiology of drowning?
No.
Good groan. Good groan. Okay, so I was a couple of years ago. I was doing a talk at the Royal Life Saving Society. Stop me if this suddenly comes back to you, and I did talk about it. so I was doing a talk on Lifesaver, but the guy before me was this guy who I'll put a link to in the chat, who is a guy at Portsmouth University, and he does all this research on what actually happens when people drown, in inverted commas.
You did talk about this.
Right. Okay. But you see, so this then becomes, so the key thing is that what he says is that it's the shock of falling into the cold water generally gives people a heart attack. So that does have a strong impact and gives you a great little choice for an interactive film. The key thing that he says is that if you fall into cold water, just take 10 or 15 seconds and to just relax. Don't immediately start thrashing. Just fall in, just flop, float, hold yourself together, and then start trying to do something about it. And because what's happening is that half the time people are having heart attacks in the water from the shock of the cold and their immediate frenzied attempt to do something. So there's a brilliant interactive choice for you, because what you're always after with interactive choices is the non-obvious thing. I would say, obviously it's completely up to you, but I would suggest consider making the story that you tell the story of the person who's drowning, because most of the choices of the rescuer are probably going to be choices that we don't know, but they're not going to surprise us. But that choice, that's a nice surprising choice. Most people have never heard of that. And remember, just to remind you that for the brief for that thing, there was this idea that you should have at least one example choice that would show us what decision you're getting the user to make. And of course, and that's a lovely choice. Yeah. Jocelyn.
Could it be possible?
You've changed your mind. You want to do drowning now.
No, I just wanted to give Albert an idea. So what if the story starts out with the person falling into the water, and then the first option is, do I swim? Do I try and swim, or what am I doing? You know what I mean?
That's what I just said.
Oh. But
honestly, Jocelyn, this is a new low of stealing my ideas.
I'm so sorry.
I mean,
I
know you're
did hear
stealing
that.
my ideas that I made a few years ago or something, but I make a suggestion. But anyway, so sorry. Let's start again. Albert, Jocelyn made a fantastic suggestion. Jocelyn, that's brilliant.
To reach out, and then you'll have the person rescue. Then it wipes over to the person rescuing the guy who's drowning, and that's what I learned from
so you're saying
I had.
Okay, so you're saying, and I'm not, so this is a choice, and I'm not sure I agree with this suggestion. So essentially what you're saying is you have two me characters. One me character is the person who falls into the water, and then you've got the choice about, do you immediately start trying to get out and thrashing around, or do you just relax for a bit? And then you're saying, and then you cut to the rescuer and you change me character and you become the rescuer. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that's an interesting concept. I would be worried about that, because I think people like to settle into the idea that in this story, I'm this person and I'm controlling this person. And if you're sort of me rescuing me, then that might get a bit, given that you don't want to make it like an ironic, you could have a lovely ironic thing of, I don't know, a romantic comedy, say, where you're both the object of desire and the desirer or something like that. But in this case, you don't want it to be ironic. You want people to be the character.
Yeah.
And if you're kind of pulling them out of the water being one character and then pushing them into another character, the risk is that they'll just kind of lose it a bit. But it's certainly a choice, and that would certainly be one option. But yeah, but this. Jacob, go ahead.
Yeah, what if instead of switching between characters in terms of interactivity, it's rather a shift of being someone who falls into water to being someone that saves someone in the water. So, as a scenario, take like, I don't know if it would be.
Oh, okay. So you've got two people in the
We're
water.
talking exactly. You got two people in the water falling in instead, and you're in control of one of those characters. Whereas where you said like take it easy for 10, 15 seconds and find your surroundings, that's one choice for you. You're able to find land and rest, but then you realize, shit, where's my friend?
And he's there
And
as well. And
yeah, exactly.
and
That's
your
where the lifesaver kicks in as well.
and your friend is thrashing around, panicking, and doing all the wrong things.
Yeah,
Clever.
because then you'd have your cake and eat it as well, while still maintaining the same character.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, there's lots of great ideas there, Albert. Shall we push on? So have a think about that. Let's discuss it more this afternoon. Who's next?
I can
I'll go next.
Okay.
Oh, Jack.
That's all right, Jacob. You go.
Sure.
Okay, Jacob.
Yeah, go for it.
Right. So yeah, my first idea we've actually discussed both of my ideas before. But the first one I'm thinking of is if you remember the name Olympus Boogie.
How could we forget?
Yeah, because I got really attached to the idea and I thought it was really fun, and it became quite developed for the short amount of time that we had with it, which I see as a good thing. And the whole idea about like having a sort of almost like the Great British Bake Off reality TV show where it's a competition and putting it in a historical setting where all of these like celebrities and comedians suddenly have to like live together as in they're in ancient Greece, while getting challenges each week, which we decide as an audience. And based on the outcome, we also get to decide who stays on the island and who has to leave as well. I just really like it. I think it's quite fun. And about the whole thing about having it themed as well. So yeah, that's one of the first ideas that I was thinking of.
Okay, cool. And what was the other one?
The other one is the video game one, and I mentioned that briefly as well, which is like a futuresque racing game. Have you ever played a game called Wipeout? So basically, like if you think about like Star Wars, land speeders, like the things hovering over ground, it's basically that, but it's on like a magnet track. So I was thinking of making a sort of racing game in that regard, which is like sci-fi, which means you can go into like satire a bit more as well. But what I want with it is that it's sort of like an interactive racing game where the choices you make outside of the track affects what happens on the track as well as the choices you make on the track. So say for an example, like I just made like one test where it's like I think I mentioned this before, like a potential sponsor, it wants you to finish second to last in a race and not first. And the reward from them is like getting a future sponsorship, which you can either agree to or ignore. So say if you finish second to last, you get sponsored by them, which means you get more money, which means you get better equipment and like a faster speeder, which means you can win the next tournament easily, which gives you admission to like the big, basically like the Formula One type of tournament. But then you can also ignore it, where you finish first, you burn your bridges with this sponsor, and you end up in the tournament immediately, but the competition is way more fierce, as an example.
Right.
So it's like, it's not necessarily that whatever path you take like alters the story completely, but it's more the nuance of gameplay and story, I would say, that is sort of like changing each other.
Okay.
The thing is, because obviously, like when you're pitching like this thing like Olympus Boogie.
So just hang on a sec. So Jacob, so I mean, let's just has anyone else played Wipeout before? Albert. Okay. So let's just. Oh, it doesn't want to let me share. Okay, never mind. I was just looking at but so is Wipeout is a single person player, so it's not a multiplayer.
It can be a multiplayer as well. Multiplayer
Right.
racing.
Okay. How often is it played as a single player as opposed to a multiplayer game? Would you say?
I was thinking that you can have it as like just like a regular racing game. You could have like a separate multiplayer part of it as well, where it's just you race online basically, and that's it. And you have like tournaments.
Okay, but this sort of story mode.
Yeah, the story mode
is sort of single player.
I'm thinking that it's single player because
otherwise it gets too complicated, right?
Yeah, because I'm thinking that you're playing as a particular character as well, with his or her own particular problems from the past, pretty broken background, and that sort of goes to effect. I have an idea of like you would play through dream sequences of that character, where you basically race through speeder through this character's memories and mind as well, which have different outcomes depending on the choices you make throughout the story as well.
Okay. All right. Just let's leave the dream sequences out. I can only handle one level of reality at a time. It's intriguing. I mean, the idea of the sponsor who doesn't want you to win is a little bit sort of counterintuitive to me. But because why would he not want? Why would they not want you to win? However, are you familiar with this whole thing with Formula One with like orders and this thing where Albert's nodding, maybe because I don't really get it, but there's been this controversy about Formula One racing drivers being sort of ordered to not win. Isn't that right? Because it sort of helps the team or it's like because like one they've got two drivers and one driver is already doing better, so they want that driver to be the best possible or something, or why would the team not want everyone to try their hardest?
They have two drivers, and if they're in first and second place, I think this came about a few years ago when basically they were ordered to just accept that they're in first and second place because they didn't want them to get super competitive and end up both crashing out and getting no points.
Yeah.
And so I think they were either ordered to stay in the same place, or if like one was clearly driving better, but he was in second place, then the first place was ordered to let him go through.
Yeah.
And there was like a whole ethics thing about this because it's like the team versus self, and you have the right to tell them not to compete. And obviously for the audience, it's just trash. So.
Right.
That's really
so there you've got a scenario which is like rooted in real gaming, which might be nice. But I must say I'm still slightly struggling because I think that put it like this: if it was a movie, it's a great. Okay, maybe this is a great idea. Why it's not a good idea for a game, because it's a great idea for a movie. It's a classic movie idea, right? You know, you've got the hero's trying to do his best, and then, you know, evil, creepy person says, hey, kid, you got to stay back, you got to not win or whatever, you got to throw the race. Our hero is torn, obviously, you know, a sort of a popcorn movie, not an art film. Our hero says, fuck you guys, I'm going to do my best, and he wins. And the evil guy goes, well, fuck you back, and then, you know, kicks him out of the team or gives him the broken down old sort of piece of shit car to race. But then, because it's a movie, not a game, the hero manages to win anyway. Because, you know, so you've got like the end of the second act, it's all down, the hero's doomed. But no, oh my God, he manages to pull through because he fixes chewing gum over the broken thing or whatever the hell it is. But he manages to save the day. And that's your happy end. And so the hero's refusal to be corrupted has not prevented the hero winning in the end. In a film, that's no problem. You just write it that way.
Yeah.
In a racing game, it's much more challenging, because how are you going to make it that the hero's got this piece of crap equipment but still manages to win if it's actually a race? Because it's because in fact, if it's a real race, the hero is indeed, at a disadvantage. But maybe it can work all the same. But you see what I mean? I think the problem is that if your genre is racing game, then it's a racing game, and it has to be a sort of a clean, fair racing game where where you feel that the opponents are real opponents and so on. If it's but if it's a story, if you're saying, okay, it looks like a racing game, but in fact it's not, it's a story which is set in the world of racing, then fine. But I'm just concerned that you've got kind of, you've got like a tension between
they're
two
clashing.
Exactly. It's not like this wonderful sort of mashup where, it's one genre is adding to the other. The risk is that one genre is subtracting, because you're breaking racing game as a genre by the nature of the story. But it's completely up to you. But that would just be my sort of observation. And also that if you were sort of pitching it to a games company, they'd go, oh, it's a racing game, great. Or not great. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I imagine that sort of genre is super, super mature, and you've got a number of Wipeout and other sort of top brands, and they sort of own it, and it's very difficult for anyone else to get in there. But of course, that might be why your kind of quirky left take on racing game is interesting for them. This is where you see you might as well ask the,
Queen.
The Queen. You might as well ask the Queen. What's a good example? That's an excellent example, Jacob. Yes, great. Because it's always difficult to come up with a non-dismissive example in that case. So you might as well ask the Duke of Edinburgh which racing game because I'm just trying to keep it non-female. Yeah. So I can't comment, but if that's what you want to do, fine. It's obviously a cash thing. But for the Olympus Boogie, great name. I think if you were going to go with that, just think about sort of how you would pitch it as sort of as realistically as possible for like a real market. Okay. And nothing else. Those were your two ideas.
Yeah, those are the things I'm most attached to. So yeah.
Okay, fine. All right, cool. All right, so it sounds like, well, it's up to you. So chew it over, and we'll see what we'll be talking about a bit later. Jack, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
So I've just got the basic idea of what we discussed last time. This sort of this telltale kind of police game.
Yes.
So I think I'm just going to stick with that.
Okay. So Jack, just describe it again, please.
So what I was going to do was I was going to try and go over like the life of a day in the life of a police officer throughout this game. Yep. Trying to interacting with people, and the way you play kind of impacts how the people of this town kind of view you, and it all comes to a head in this big the final thing I have in my head is like this interrogation scene where if you mess up in any way, the suspect will walk free and you won't secure a conviction. Yep.
Great. Okay. And you're a good police officer, is that right?
Yeah, good police officer. There's no as far as I know, as far as I think in this game, there's no chance of like corruption within the system. It's all just a very clean very clean game.
And where's it set?
That's what I'm trying to hash out in my mind. I was thinking maybe the Met Police is all I really know how to do because I've got family, had family in the Met. So.
Oh, why didn't you say so?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So this whole thing is right what you know.
Yeah.
fantastic. So you know about the Met Police, and
Yeah.
fantastic. I think that's absolutely perfect. All right, love it.
Mm.
Why does it have to be a day in the life? Because I'm just thinking that because what's kind of boring is, like, as you know, real life policing, there's all sorts of kind of not particularly exciting, low intensity sort of encounters with, random sort of drunk people lying on the pavement, or,
Yeah.
and people sort of choking, or, sort
Yeah.
of with mental health problems, kind of freaking
Mhm.
out, or whatever it might be. All of which is could be interesting, but if what you're interested in is going after a criminal, and the interrogation where you need to get the criminal essentially to entrap themselves
Mm.
by revealing what they've done. If it's an interrogation game, um, would it not be an idea just focus on the interrogation and focus on that story rather
Yeah.
than
So,
making it sort of
yeah.
day in the
Maybe
life?
actually. Maybe actually. Yeah.
Because interrogation is a great scenario for any form of interactive film,
Mm.
and so I would sort of try and focus on that.
Okay.
And have you done any research on, because I'm just thinking in terms of choices, like, are there any sort of cool interrogation non-obvious tricks that you could get the hero to use?
Obviously, I think, one I had in my mind has got the very basic, be smart about it or be violent about it. That's kind of the obvious one. When he
Yeah,
starts,
yeah, come
and
on.
then I'm thinking, yeah,
You ask your family in the Met,
that'll get you fired. Yeah,
is be violent about it. Is that an option?
yeah. No,
Uh,
but I was also thinking maybe more reverse psychology tricks.
yes. Now you're talking. Yep.
Kind of catching him out on lies, that sort of thing.
Yep. Okay. So, I mean, I'm just looking at a YouTube video called 10 Police Interrogation Techniques, and it seems to be a British video. I have no
Mm.
idea if the video is any good, but why don't you have a look at that just to kick off with, because
Okay.
that might have, something in it,
Yeah, yeah,
because that's really what you want, is you want
yeah.
your sort of nice, clever little techniques that get the bad guy to put themselves in jail. That's what you're after. And I'm sure a bit of Googling will a bit of
Gonna
Google
help. Yeah,
will give you lots more stuff. With something like that, research is always your friend, because
right.
you know millions of people have tried to work out ways to do effective interrogations over the last 100, 200 years, involving no violence, but just sort of cunning. And
Mm.
so just, steal from them. Is
Yeah.
always the best way. Yes. Cool. Okay, well, that sounds great. Jacob, just one thing, though, with Olympus Boogie, if that was what you were going to do, have a think about, like, is there like a key choice that the user has to make, i.e. the person at home? And what ways can you get people to interact which would be more exciting, be more live? If just imagine, you imagine you're pitching it to, and also, sorry, is it for Sweden? Is that the idea?
No. I was thinking UK.
Okay. All right, chew that one over a little bit more, because you can make it for Sweden if
Yeah.
that's what you want. And if you feel that there's a heritage of kind of shows kind of similar in Sweden, which have been very successful, then maybe it's a great idea to pitch it in Sweden. You know, and then once it's a huge hit in Sweden, then, you know, the sort of dumb, fat, and happy people at ITV or whatever, then they're far more likely to pay attention than if it's just an idea on paper sort of thing. And you know, and you can set it wherever you like. And if it's like a sort of a Swedish thing, you know, then feel free to, you know, make it a Swedish thing. But you don't have to, obviously. But yeah, just have a think about the key choice and how are you going to get this drowsy, fat, dumb, and happy Swedish TV person to think, oh yes, great. You know, that would, you know, is there some choice, some new choice that you can get the audience to do which they haven't done before, or which is emotionally, you know, powerful? Yep. Okay, so I think that's it. Thanks everybody. I will switch off my camera and my microphone, but I will still be here. So if anyone wants to talk about their projects like now, then fine. But if not, no problem. See you at 3:30.
3:30. See ya.
So, all right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. See you
Thank
later.
You, bye.